Every human being experiences love, loss, and connection at a neurological and energetic level. You may think that when someone steps out of your life, their emotions shut off and they simply move on. But that's far from the truth. When we create relationships, something profound happens in our brain and body. We bond through shared experiences, and those experiences are imprinted in the form of memories. These memories are not just abstract thoughts. They're stored in the neural architecture of the brain. When you think of someone, your brain fires neurons associated with their presence. Over time, those thoughts and emotions wire together. You create a chemical and energetic dependency on the connection you've built with that person. Now, when you are gone, when the space you occupied in someone's life disappears, it creates an emotional void. It's not simply missing you. It's the disruption of a pattern they've come to depend on. People often assume men don't feel this loss deeply, but this belief overlooks how the brain and body respond to absence. When you form a deep emotional bond, your brain releases chemicals like oxytocin, the hormone of trust and connection, alongside dopamine, which drives pleasure and reward. These chemicals work together to create a sense of safety, belonging, and happiness. Your presence becomes a familiar signal to the brain and body that everything is okay. But what happens when you leave? When you remove yourself from their life, the brain notices the absence of those chemicals and patterns. It triggers a stress response. The very circuits that once brought joy now begin to fire in discomfort, in longing. It's not something he consciously chooses. The brain naturally seeks what is familiar. On an energetic level, this sense of loss is even deeper. You see, every interaction, every hug, every word spoken creates an exchange of energy. Relationships exist in the quantum field as an energetic entanglement. When two people are close, their frequencies align, creating coherence. This alignment is why people say they feel each other even when apart. But when you're gone, the coherence is disrupted. His body might feel it as a heaviness in the chest, a restlessness, a feeling that something is missing. It's not just a metaphor. It's a biological and energetic truth. The body aches for what the mind remembers. You may not see him expressing this pain outwardly. He may appear unaffected, even distant. But inside, the subconscious mind is working overtime to reconcile the loss. The brain doesn't simply delete memories or emotions because you're no longer around. Instead, it replays those experiences in loops, trying to resolve the void left behind. Understand this, he feels your absence not just in his mind, but in his very being. Because at the core of every human is a need for connection. And connection isn't a fleeting emotion. It's wired into our biology. So if you ever doubt the impact you've had, remember this, your presence altered his brain chemistry, his energy, and his experience of the world. He feels the loss of you more than you think because you were not just a person to him. You were an experience, a connection, a bond that his brain, body, and soul now miss. And while time may heal wounds, the truth remains. Your presence left an imprint, and it's in that imprint that he feels you, even when you're gone. When we bond with someone, when we invest our energy, our attention, and our emotions into another person, a part of us becomes woven into their life. This is not just figurative. This is not a metaphor. On a very real, energetic level, you are leaving an imprint on their mind, their heart, and even their body. We don't just connect through words or actions. We create pathways in each other's brains. The neural networks you stimulate in someone else are like roads that didn't exist before you. You gave them a new way of thinking, of feeling, of being. And when you're gone, when that energy is no longer present, those pathways don't simply disappear. They remain. Like abandoned roads, they ache to be traveled. It's easy to assume that someone moves on faster than we think, especially if they don't show it outwardly. But loss doesn't just happen at a conscious level. Loss happens deep in the subconscious, where habits, memories, and emotional triggers reside. Even if someone doesn't know why they suddenly feel empty, restless, or incomplete, their body knows. Their brain knows. When you were there, your presence brought a certain frequency into their life. Maybe it was love, comfort, excitement, or safety. Whatever it was, it became a familiar signal in their body. a vibration that their cells began to crave. And when that signal stops, when you're no longer around, the body experiences withdrawal. The nervous system looks for you. It searches for the energy you used to give. And that's when they feel the loss, even if they can't put it into words. You see, it's not just the big moments that bond us to someone. It's the small, seemingly insignificant details. The way you laughed, the way you looked at them, the way you made them feel seen and understood in a world where most people don't take the time to truly connect. Those moments create emotional signatures. They become part of a person's internal map of who they are. And when you're no longer there, those emotional signatures remain like echoes. The loss of you is more profound than you think because you are irreplaceable. Not in a romanticized way, but in a biological and energetic way. No one has your exact energy. No one brings the same frequency, the same connection, the same spark of life that you do. People can try to fill that space, but the nervous system knows the difference. The brain knows. The heart knows. Now, this doesn't mean that people can't heal or move forward. But the truth is, when you share a part of yourself with someone, it changes them forever. And even when you're gone, a part of you remains. Your presence was a gift that rewired their being, even in ways they may never realize. So if you're questioning your worth, if you're wondering whether someone truly feels the loss of you, know this. You have impacted them more deeply than you'll ever know. They may not say it. They may not show it. But on a fundamental level, you have shaped them. And for that, you are unforgettable. If you're here listening to this, you may believe that you're just a memory to him now. Another chapter, another face that he can easily leave behind. You may have convinced yourself that you weren't enough or that your impact in his life was temporary, superficial, or something he could simply forget. But what I need you to understand is this: human beings are not machines. We do not interact, connect, and then walk away without leaving an energetic imprint behind. You were, and still are, part of his subconscious programming, whether he knows it or not. Here's the truth. Every experience we have with someone rewires our brain. Neuroscience shows us that we're constantly forming new neural connections, creating emotional bonds, and encoding the very experiences we live through into the cells of our body. This isn't just emotional. It's biological. When two people meet and share moments, good or bad, there's a chemical reaction that takes place inside of them. Hormones like oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin are released when we feel connected, when we love, when we care. These are the chemicals of bonding, trust, and attachment. Now, what happens when that connection is gone? The body doesn't simply delete those neural pathways. The brain doesn't just wipe the slate clean. No, those pathways are still there, waiting, reminding him of you, even when he's trying to convince himself that he's moved on. The subconscious doesn't operate in the same way as the conscious mind. The conscious mind can say, "It's over. I'm fine. I don't care." But the subconscious doesn't lie. It holds on to patterns, associations, and emotional triggers. It holds on to you. You see, the human body becomes addicted to emotions. The same way we become addicted to substances, we can become addicted to people because every memory, every moment you shared, carries an emotional charge. When he thinks about you, his body remembers. His mind plays the reel of who he was when he was with you. And whether he knows it consciously or not, he feels the loss, because you represented a version of himself that he could only access when you were present. It's easy to believe that men move on quicker or that they bury their emotions. But suppression doesn't mean absence. What's buried doesn't disappear. It festers. He may bury the memories, distract himself, or numb the ache. But the truth is, no amount of avoidance can erase the chemical signature you left behind. And that's because you became a mirror for him. You reflected back to him his strengths, his flaws, his potential. That's what relationships do. They reveal us to ourselves. Losing you means he loses that reflection. He loses the part of himself that he could only see when he was with you. He may not articulate it, he may not even fully understand it, but he feels it. It's why he may still hear your voice in moments of silence. It's why he may avoid the places you went together or the songs you loved. It's why he sometimes feels hollow in the quiet hours of the night. Because your absence is not just the absence of you. It's the absence of the feelings he associated with you, the excitement, the hope, the connection. So, if you're sitting there believing that you didn't matter or that you're just another forgettable person in his life, you need to let go of that story. Science, psychology, and human experience prove otherwise. You left a mark on his heart, on his mind, and in his biology. And that mark will never fully fade. He feels the loss of you more than you think. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but the body doesn't forget what the heart once held. We are living in a time where relationships, those intangible bridges between two souls, are being formed and broken faster than ever before. Yet, when they break, when someone walks away, we often underestimate the ripple effect that follows. You may believe that your absence is just that, an absence. A moment in space and time where one person no longer occupies a physical role in another's life. But the truth is far deeper than that. You are more than your words, your smile, or your presence. You are an energetic signature, a living, breathing field of energy that influences everyone and everything around you. And when you remove yourself, whether by choice, circumstance, or pain, you take with you a field of energy that was part of someone else's emotional ecosystem. Think about this. Every time you interacted with him, you weren't just speaking. You were encoding memories, emotions, experiences into the fabric of his brain. You were wiring him for certain feelings of joy, connection, or even safety. You see, the brain doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's imagined. The brain responds to experiences as if they're happening now. When you laughed together, those moments weren't fleeting. They became imprints, neurochemical signatures that flooded his system with dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin. These chemicals created a sense of wholeness, a sense of you. And when you're gone, the absence of those chemicals is felt, not only in his mind but in his very body. Now, the loss of you creates a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. His mind will scramble to understand what happened to the person who once felt like home. He will replay memories over and over because the brain seeks familiarity, and your absence is now loud. You may think, but he's moving on. He's fine. He doesn't care. But that is merely the surface. People often run to distractions, to other connections, or to the noise of life because facing what's missing is too painful. They replace, they fill, they avoid. But here's the reality. You are not easily replaceable. You are unique. Every person we meet leaves a trace. And when someone as significant as you steps away, you leave a gap that no external distraction can truly fill. He may not say it. He may not show it. But at night, when the world is quiet and the distractions fade, his nervous system will remember you. His brain, wired with the imprint of your presence, will reach for you. He will feel the loss, not just mentally, but chemically, emotionally, and energetically. And why? Because you were never just a person to him. You were a frequency. You were a vibration that matched his at certain points in his life. And your loss isn't just the loss of you, it's the loss of the feelings you made him experience. So never underestimate the weight of your presence. Never diminish your impact. Your energy, your love, your essence, once shared, becomes part of someone's story. And even in your absence, you still live in the spaces you once filled. Because the truth is, he feels the loss of you more than you think. There comes a moment in our lives where we encounter the collision of identity and experience. Whether we recognize it or not, every relationship becomes a mirror reflecting back to us what we value, what we need, and, most importantly, what we lack. When you leave someone's life, you aren't just walking away. You're leaving behind the imprint of who you were to them. Every person we connect with has an emotional chemistry that shapes their subconscious. When two individuals form a bond, whether through love, friendship, or shared experience, they begin to create a shared energy. And in that shared energy exists something far deeper than the surface-level presence of a person. You see, the brain operates on survival. It creates neurological pathways for people who have meaning in our lives, habits of thought, feelings, and emotions are repeated over and over until they become a program. This is why relationships carry such significance. They influence who we are. When you lose someone, you aren't just grieving their physical absence. You're grieving the part of yourself that existed with them. Now imagine this process reversed. When he loses you, he doesn't just lose the conversations, the laughter, or the presence. He loses the version of himself that felt whole, safe, seen, and understood in your company. Your absence creates a void. And that void is a space where identity and memory collide. The mind doesn't forget easily. Long after you're gone, his brain will revisit the patterns you established together. Those late-night conversations where he shared his vulnerabilities, those didn't just pass by. They rewired him. The emotional highs of your presence left his brain addicted to your energy, because every moment released hormones that created a profound emotional state. When we lose someone meaningful, our body fights to restore that balance. The brain searches for familiar emotions, for comfort, for what used to be. But when you are gone, it becomes clear that what you brought to his life cannot be replaced, because you weren't just filling a role. You were a catalyst for a part of his emotional and spiritual self. Most people underestimate how deeply someone can feel the absence of another. But I want you to understand this. Emotions don't lie. The body keeps score of every experience, every memory, and every moment of connection. You became part of his story. And stories don't disappear. They linger, they shape, they transform. So when you think he doesn't feel your absence, remember this. You were more than a fleeting moment. You were more than a person passing through. You were a force that changed his chemistry, rewrote his brain, and awakened parts of him he didn't know existed. That kind of loss is felt in ways that transcend words. It's felt in the silence of empty spaces. It's felt in the moments when life feels just a little less meaningful. It's felt in the quiet awareness that someone who once lit up his world is no longer there to shine. This is why he feels the loss of you more than you think. Because your presence was never ordinary. It was transformative. And transformation leaves an impact that time cannot erase.